and the mic goes everywhere. I don't want to move this. It's been such a powerful lesson. So, and they're overflowing. You see, when it's full, they said it's for others. And when it's not full, you keep on filling it up. Thank you for that lesson. My name is Kagiso. My surname is Motseto. I'm an occupational therapist. Oh, the mic. Right. Let's start that again. I'm Kagiso Motseto. I'm an occupational therapist. I am in private practice. I've been in practice for the last 5 years. And by a show of hands, who knows what an occupational therapist does? The professionals don't comment. Anybody? There's a lady who knows professionals don't comment. So, Mrs. Ramotola, you're excluded. Yes, you should have an idea. Do you want to try?
I think it's part of if an employee is going through challenges mentally, how do they confront their language or where do they seek support?
Okay. Partly, that what you've said is possibly 20% of what occupational therapists do. But thank you. I will talk to the other 80%. Anybody? Okay. As occupational therapists, we don't just deal with adults. And I'm using this platform as a way of education as well. To say occupational therapists don't just deal with adults. We use purposeful and meaningful activities to be able to assess, rehabilitate, treat children, adults, old people into functioning normally day to day. Typical example, when you take it to mental health, it becomes a bit complex and abstract sometimes. So let's start with somebody that's been in an accident, spinal cord injury. They will bring that person to an occupational therapist to help them learn how to drive the wheelchair. They will bring that person to an occupational therapist to learn how to climb. Do you have a ramp? Mfundis, are you accessible? That's what I do. Oh, okay. Is it the right angle? I'm not going to go there. That's fine. Let's leave it. But typically that's what we do. Then we take them through rehabilitation through the use of purposeful and meaningful activities to get them functional in day-to-day life. So that's what occupational therapists do. Children. We see children that are not functional at school. So, haba moraba akwale 3. We kwala so. So, mem ko grade 1 armara bana ba makwala 3 so. Why when I kwala so? It's because his brain is interpreting something not properly. And therefore, they need to be brought to an occupational therapist to come and see what the issue is. And we help them to say, when you're looking at figure background, when you're looking at a picture, you must color inside. There's a reason why bar draw is and bar color within the lines. It's because her features within the lines buka. So those are some of the things that a therapist would be able to do, occupational therapists would be able to do with children. So we've talked about children, we've talked about a bit of the adults from a physical side. Let's then talk about on the mental health side. You have somebody that has got major depression. We've all heard a lot about major depression, how it manifests, how you could see somebody. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on as well. What does an occupational therapist do? We use purposeful activities to engage them, to assist them, and to rehabilitate them into proper functioning to be able to go back to the workplace. This person is working as give me an example, as an accountant. Maybe let's take it there. They've got major depression. What are some of the requirements of his job as an accountant? He's got to concentrate, he's got to focus, he's got to problem solve, he needs abstract thinking. We then choose activities carefully that will enhance those concepts so that Mr. X can go back and function back in the workplace as an accountant. I had a lady recently who said to me, you know, Kagiso, you couldn't possibly understand what I do. I'm a curriculum developer for the Department of Public Service and Administration. And then at that point to me, I had to choose so that I can stay calm. And I'm like, but yes, breathing. And I had to breathe, which is not one of my strengths. When I was sitting there breathing, I was going, and I'm like, I'm sure this is not the right way of breathing. But I had to breathe. I had to have an internal conversation with myself to say, what's going on here? Why are you feeling so aggrieved with this lady who believes that she's a curriculum developer and you don't know anything about her work. So don't laugh. So I sat back and then I said, okay, I'm aggrieved now because she's challenging me and I'm feeling challenged, but how am I going to assist her to be able to go back to work? She was sent to me for a reason, and therefore we need to establish what are the issues, where are we, and how can she go back and function in the workplace. So then I explained how we analyze activities, how we analyze day-to-day things, to be able to say, you may not think that baking is important, but try doing baking when you're depressed and come and tell me about it. Because it's a baking powder. All the other gereedschappers that you must put into the baking. People see us in a hospital setting when we do activities with our clients and they say, oh, wait till their basket give us, and they do know. There's a reason why we engage people purposefully in activities. It's because you must have an A and a Z and follow a thought process when you are baking scones. I promise you, try baking scones when you're anxious. And then you're starting to have a panic attack when you're going through that. We do those kind of day-to-day activities as occupational therapists with our clients to be able to assist them to function purposefully, in the world in general. Sure, I spent a good 5 minutes explaining OT. I suppose that's what I do. Pardon? Okay. When we look at stats in general, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group says they estimated that 1 in 6 people have some form of mental health issue or disorder. There was statistics. Stats SA, for instance, also looked at that stats to say about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out of hundreds of stats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if you think about it, that's quite a high prevalence of mental, mental issues that we're dealing with. But they also say an estimated 30% of the entire population would have dealt with some form of a mental illness or mental disorder by the time they go 6 feet under. Now, 30% says you and I are not excluded. We could be in the 30%. And how do we manage and how do we deal with that mental illness, in a work sphere? I suppose that's my focus really. How is it managed and how is it dealt with? What are some of the common issues or mental health issues that we see in the workplace? I've already talked about one. Major depression. Any other guesses? Bipolar mood disorder. Anxiety disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder, because of the trauma that we're exposed to, because of the violence that we're exposed to, even secondary post-traumatic disorder, because of all the other negative things that we're exposed to on a day-to-day basis. My daughter has taught me something that is called, she says it's a mental health or me day, something. She's 15 and she said to me, Mommy, there must be a day where you don't listen to the radio, where you don't watch TV, where you do nothing. And you spend the day in pajamas, because I know you're one of those people that work, and never rest. So, secondary post-traumatic stress disorder, primary and secondary. What's the last one? Come on. Not necessarily schizophrenia. What kind of abuse? Substance abuse. Substance abuse. And that for me is also key, because just like we've been told today, those are some of the choices we make. I get Bazala. Let's be honest. We start with a glass of wine once on a Wednesday. It goes to Tuesday and Thursdays. And then it goes to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then by the time you present to Vista Clinic, in Centurion, you have a problem. You are unable to do anything. You cannot function without the dop of whiskey. So substance abuse is something that is also prominent, that we're seeing it, and the specific occupations that actually would, is it a predispose or make somebody prone to that kind of exposure. What I've seen in practice is that policemen, I don't know if we have policemen here, and women, in order to cope with the trauma that they get exposed to on a day-to-day basis, are exposed to substances. Call center agents are some of the clients that we see because of the abuse that they go through on a day-to-day basis, yeah? Oh, and you as well, yes, be coping, because yes, professionals, because you don't have an outlet. You don't have anybody to talk to with all the other situations that you've experienced, and therefore you end up now having to, be the friend to that glass of wine. And then, you calm yourself down. Pardon? You love yourself, and it looks like the right choice to make. It does look like the right choice to make. Other occupations that are predisposed or could be susceptible to substance abuse. Banking, but before I get there, we have Department of Justice, court clerks. You know the people that type minutes at court? Whoever thinks about them and the job that they do. Can you imagine sitting every day in Magistrate Mabuya's court and you're listening to rape stories of a child, of listening to women that are abused and they have to be admitted almost every year to be able to deal with all the trauma that they experience on a day-to-day basis. So there are some of those occupations that make people open to and susceptible to being able to abuse of substances and not just alcohol. And priests. You feel like it was a lot. Liberudi. And I'm Liberudi. Yes, so it's those occupations that could really lend themselves to. Okay, I went through a bit of definitions for the different disorders, but I am not going to cover them because I think that's readily available information. But what are some of the, just as a quick glance, what are some of the causative factors that could possibly exist for mental illness disorders that we have? We have genetic predisposition. I think that's something that we can't shy away from. It is there. You are born. There's certain illnesses that if me analiona, you have a certain chance of getting it. If when the genetics goes when you do that cross study, then somebody else in the family will get it. So there's a genetic predisposition. If both parents have got that kind of illness, they are even more likely to also get that kind of a mental disorder, mental illness. I spoke about exposure to trauma and accidents. Retrenchments, Bazalwane. We hear in the news lately about people losing their jobs, and it's a real thing. It's there. It's a practical day-to-day thing. Where people are losing their jobs, and losing your job goes to losing your life roles, because that's something that I mentioned there. As Mrs. Ramotwala, your life roles are your Ntabi, you're a mother, you're a wife, you provide maybe, you do certain things. So when you lose your job, that, everything else, goes haywire. So retrenchments are a big, what should I call it? Risk factor, actually, that we're dealing with. And that personally, I feel there must be practical interventions that are put in place to be able to assist people that are going through retrenchments, starting from a personal mastery point of view, starting from a choice point of view, starting from I am here, what do I do next based on the situation that I'm in. I was I retrenched 5 years ago when I started my practice. I suppose my company was going through downsizing and it was cutting down 70% of the staff. And then it was like, okay, now the stable income is going to go. What's the choice? We heard about life choices. You sit there and you've got to make real decisions about what it is that you want to do. Am I going to sit and not do anything, or what's the next step? So people need real practical guidelines in terms of how to deal with such issues when they come, when they face them in day-to-day life. Bereavement is another cause of mental illnesses that we are seeing. Complicated bereavement. White man, people just do not know where to go, where to start, how to access Ntabi, how to access Dumi, how to deal with such issues. I've spoken about life roles. Family disputes. We love our families, but they can be a source of stress sometimes. Ne? I get it. Where you just have mother not and then father is an alcoholic, those things can predispose somebody to mental illnesses. Financial stressors, big, like she says, big financial stresses. How, those, could lead to mental disorders that we see. And then the one that probably also you have interacted with to me is employer-employee conflict. More and more I find that in practice we have people that are unhappy with their jobs and unhappy with their supervisors and managers. Or they have managers that are feeling threatened by the subordinate, and therefore they are being, their thoughts, bullying, ibile una le degree, and then ha fitla mo o tlong challenger amplelle XYZ. So we are finding that somebody will come to me and tell me a long story, and then I listen. I'm like, okay, so what is the problem? Get out of it with a whole hour. You said name the problem. What is the problem? No, I've got a manager who feels this and this and this and this way about me. And so those kind of conflicts are becoming more and more prevalent, and therefore leading to mental health issues in the workplace. And no one knows quite how to address the big bosses, the DDGs and the senior managers. Posh, I know you work with them, these people. You must tell them to be nice to their employees, because they really cause us, fine, we see the clients, but it becomes a problem, and the person goes back to be dealing with the same person who's giving them stress in the workplace, and then what? That becomes an issue. There are certain things that we look out for. So we've said these are the issues that may lead to a mental health disorder, but what is it that makes you look at Kagiso and say, how do we identify, how do we see, Horimara, there's something ailing wrong? When you ask me how I am in the morning, because we are in a church place, do you ask me because you care? You ask me looking at me, or you ask me as a passing comment, how are you? In our feet. It usually is a passing comment, ne? It usually is, we don't observe. I'm a very robust and loud person. You can see I'm not standing still. Usually my friends can tell, just by engaging with me on the phone, that there's something wrong. Because they listen to my voice and they say, no, there is something that's not quite right. What's happening? I said, no, I'm fine. Can I go? I know the cup is finished now. I cannot see it, I am down, but I'll be saying I'm fine. So do we take the time to notice and to say, what are some of the issues that could indicate that there's a mental health issue? And it's not just the workplace. I'm going to talk about the work. Mara altomenga self-care and appearance. Do me uchachise kayona. If unkisikile moto ke pelankele to do, and then poshi ke fitla kwa how bianong ke apere onoroko motlhong. And then no, and I'm being serious. And then you meet me and ke tlhakatlhakane kore wa bona gore mara I have not had a bath in 2 days. I have not groomed. I have not washed, I have not brushed my teeth, I am not looking well. What does that say to you? Something is not right. Something is not quite right. So it's not just about mara day to day go high, heart homa. It's the depressive symptoms that will manifest in a loss of interest in day-to-day things. Loss of interest in taking care of yourself. My clients will say, wait, see, I don't care what I look like. I used to go to the salon every 2 weeks to go and get my hair done, my nails done and everything, but I don't do that anymore. What's the point? Then you must know there is something that's not quite exactly, that's not right. That is manifesting itself in that way. Participation in hobbies and leisure activities. But we must hobby that too. Huh? If you're not hobby anymore, what is... Why are you laughing? We must hobby. If you're not participating in those hobbies, what is the issue? Do you still run? Yes. You ran yesterday. Thank you. Sorry, I put her on the spot because I know she runs. But it's those kind of questions to say, are you still participating in the day-to-day hobbies? And is this person just lost interest altogether? Abanali interest in doing, whatever it is that they're doing. In the workplace, What are some of the things that you can look for to see that somebody's struggling and they could potentially have a mental health disorder? Lack of interest in their work tasks. I had somebody that came to me to say, for the last 2 weeks, last month, I would just get to the office, open my laptop and stare. Presentism, that's what we call it. So you're present, but you're not quite there. You're not doing anything. What does that mean? It says there's lack of productivity. When you look at the outputs at the end of the week, when they're supposed to have called 50 clients, they've spoken to 5 clients. That is an issue. If you're working with somebody, you're a manager or a supervisor, what is that saying about mental health? Decreased attention and concentration leading to increased error rate in what they're doing. So suddenly somebody who would write an impeccable document that you read from A to Z, in reality errors about this and therefore and you're like, what is not going on? And we're not saying this is a one-off incident and once-off occurrence, because all of us have bad days again. But you are talking now something that you observe over a period of time. You are looking at a period of 2 weeks or so, going to a month, together with all the other things that we're talking about. That needs to say to you in the workplace, what is going on with this person that I'm working with? They are just not up to their game in terms of what I know them to, to be able to do. Feelings of being overwhelmed by usual tasks. So, but they feel, man, they break down. Like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. What is the issue? Conflict with colleagues. Balwana. Where's the balwana? And you don't understand, Maro, what's the problem? But the problem is there. You're laughing. You're thinking it is now saying alarm bells. And it's never a problem, everybody else around them, because one are the external locus of control. It's not about me, it's about everybody else around me. Conflict in the workplace. What are we dealing with there? Is it some form of issue that we need to be managing? Lack of self-esteem, and therefore affecting your ability to present yourself, to do the things that you need to do. So suddenly, Olimuto confident, you can present, you can do workshops, you're now feeling like, I just can't, Like, I can't face people, I don't have the energy. Those are the things that you need to look out for, and those are some of the symptoms that mental health disorders would manifest themselves in the workplace. What do occupational therapists do in that kind of an instance? We obviously treat people not just in a private setting, but usually if somebody has been diagnosed. And it's important, I think, before I move into what OTs do, because sometimes we are at the end of the food chain, I must be honest. The doctors and the Osentabis and the Dumis will get everything. If we get to see the patient, we are lucky. But it doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. Proper diagnosis is important. Please, can you stop consulting Dr. Google? I know we all have Dr. Google. My mother has discovered Google. If she does not know anything, please Google it. I thought they were clapping for my mother discovering Google. Dr. Google can be helpful. How do you say, mid-range sometimes? Tabi learned the hard way this morning and me yesterday, or sometimes but sometimes it can scare you and give you such wrong information about what you're going through, about what you're experiencing. Typical example of how Google can give you wrong information. You Google some of the symptoms. I don't sleep at night. I'm not eating well. I don't exercise. I've lost interest in all of this. And then you mention some other 3. Sometimes I get energetic and I watch the whole house and I only sleep 2 hours. If you listen to the initial part of these symptoms, okaramotonali depression. Mara, when you go to a proper psychiatrist, they will tell you Rumoto could have bipolar mood disorder. And bipolar mood disorder in only 1 and 2. So you need to have proper diagnosis to say, what is it that you're suffering from? Not just from Dr. Google Batu. The next thing we look next door, unadi pilisi go next door. Out feelers on our nikina levo me swara own. And then we talk about bedel. And run numbers and to so. I get so please, let's just get proper diagnosis. Therefore, we can get proper assistance. In OTs, we deal with individual and group therapy. I like the group therapy part because we get to interact. That's in a hospital setting usually, because in a private setting it'll be more one-on-one consultation with the client. But in a hospital setting, we address issues such as problem solving. What's a problem solving? Can be an issue. As in, how do I go about just dealing with an issue when it presents itself? Naming it, what are the options, brain dumping, brainstorming, getting to narrow down your options and then getting to a solution. Problem solving. In group therapy, you don't just feel, kind of working this little weight. You feel you're not the only one that has got the issue. I forget what it's called. You also get to learn from the other people that you're interacting with in terms of what it is that you're doing. Some people will be quiet in group sessions, some people will participate. I feel that sometimes the more you put yourself out there, the more you learn from the group sessions. Problem solving skills, assertiveness training skills, to be able to approach that manager approach. I get it? Because I need. Also, approach because you are acting from a place of fear. And your choices are saying, I don't have choices. I have firmly learned over the past 2 to 3 years that we always have a choice. It was a hard lesson. When it dawns on you, because then you get to a point where you realize, X, it's because of all the other choices that I made in the last 12 months. I cannot blame anybody else but myself and the choices that I made. So it is quite. I lost my train of thought. Oh yes, assertiveness training. I spoke about assertiveness training, problem solving skills, conflict resolution skills. How do we solve conflict? If already also wako section yako next door because unwele coffee how and the go kitchening, you don't just go waiting man and then, no. What's the right way to approach conflict and deal with the conflict and resolve the conflict? We'll also look at functional ability. I've talked about a hospital setting. You've been diagnosed, you've been sent to Osintabi for intervention, you've now been sent to an occupational therapist, it's taken you through all the group sessions and everything. Now it's time to prepare you to get back to the workplace. You're saying, but I don't think I have the strength. I don't think I can. They bring you to an occupational therapist and then we sit down. We then do what we call a functional capacity assessment. Functional capacity assessment is very important. That will be able to establish what you can and what you cannot do. It's not only done in a hospital setting, but it's often also requested in a private setting. So when somebody is sent to an OT, companies will be saying, Selina, therefore we need you to give us guidance in terms of what can she do? So in a functional capacity assessment, we look at what is the challenge, what is the impairment, what is the job requirements, is there a match or there's no match? And that's the time when the lady told me that I cannot possibly know what she does as a curriculum developer because she was sent to me for a functional capacity assessment and somebody's laughing at me. But then I had to explain to her that we look at your job tasks, we look at your illness. If you have got major depression or anxiety disorder, that is making you not able to concentrate and focus and have slowness in terms of doing your work. We make recommendations to employer to say, how can they accommodate you to continue doing your work? Which is going to lead me to the next topic I want to talk about, which is reasonable accommodation in the workplace. How are people that have got mental health disorders accommodated in the workplace? Accommodation means you continue to work but reduced demands. There are 2 provisions in the law that we all need to remember. Whether you're dealing with somebody that has got a physical disability or a mental disability or a mental health disorder. Employment Equity Act of 1998 and Code of Good Practice in terms of employing people with disabilities. Those 2 legislative requirements make provision for employers to accommodate with disability. So when you go to hospital or on a mental health disorder and you want to go back to work and about you must go back to that work and you stress. You don't know where to start. I assessed a lady a year ago who worked for the famous SARS. They're now famous because I now know why there is a investigative whatever. How do they call these things now that they're investigating? Commission. Yes. Who had not gone on leave for almost 5 years. She was a senior manager and she was performing exceptionally well. So a performer of note at work. When there was an issue with any team, she was moved from this team to the next team. When she was an issue there was moved from this team to this team. Until one day, she was home and she had applied for leave for that December. And she was told the Monday morning by her boss that I forgot when I approved your leave that there's a very important senior managers meeting. So you need to come back into the office. Whether you got there or go, it's neither here nor there. I need you back in the office. She says she tried to get out of bed and she fell. And she didn't know what's going on. She fell, literally. By the time she had to get to hospital, her husband and her kids had to carry her from upstairs into the car. And that's when it was discovered that she has got major depression because she had not taken leave in 5 years. She had been performing and everything. She went through the process, as I've explained now, and she was supposed to go back to work. She was sent to me for a functional capacity evaluation. When you are on treatment for mental health disorders, you often take medication. That medication affects a lot of, and it's a good thing because it addresses the chemical imbalance that comes with the medical disorder. So please don't just stop medication because you're saying it will lose the concentration. But there's side effects to most medication. Unless it is natural herbs, there would be side effects to medication. Sleepiness, drowsiness, fatigue, lack of energy. It's because you are on this medication. This medication is meant to address the anxiety disorder that you have. You can't just stop taking it willy-nilly. And the doctor says you're going to take it for the next 2 years. What do? You can't stop working. You need to continue working. That's why there's a need for a functional capacity evaluation, for someone to make a recommendation to say, she can go back to work. However, she needs to be reasonably accommodated. How do we reasonably accommodate her? She can't supervise 30 people like she was doing. Actually, maybe she can't even supervise people at all. I switched it off. I talk too much, but it is fine. I think let's continue talking about reasonable. We're almost done. I know it's the afternoon, we're all tired. We all want to go and have our Saturday. But let me just touch on reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation can take various measures when it comes to people that have got mental health disorders. You can reduce the number of tasks that the person is doing. So therefore, they used to work as a manager. They cannot work as a manager anymore for a period of time. At which point, at the end of 18 months, maybe they would need a reassessment. You can give them additional support in terms of the manager that used to be saying, I will manage you at a distance. They'll bring the employee closer to give them close feedback in terms of maybe every week they need to be monitored in terms of their performance. You can give them rest breaks. It's allowed. How many of you are employers? And I need you to remember this conversation. Yes, to say, how can I reasonably accommodate somebody in the workplace so that they can continue working? So, rest breaks, they may need a nap between whatever time, between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, so that they can recharge and be able to go back to work. They may need altered working hours as well. Instead of starting 8 o'clock with everybody else, you may request that you start at 9 o'clock and maybe you finish a bit earlier, especially when you're fresh from hospital and you're still reintegrating back into the workplace. That's the time that you need to be saying, Mr. Employer, can I possibly have these kind of provisions? And it is there. The law makes provision that the employer needs to look at all alternatives to accommodate you before they can dismiss you. Ne? So let's not be scared to ask for these kind of things in the workplace. Sometimes we sit and we suffer and you say, you go back to the same problem that landed you in hospital in the first place. How do you then expect to get better? You're not. You're going to keep going back every 6 months. because you're not addressing what is the issue here. Now, that being said, employers don't have to give reasonable accommodation. Let's say maybe you never had to be admitted to hospital, but you do have, thank you. But you do need reasonable accommodation. It's also a give and take situation. You have to disclose, you choose to disclose, not have to, in order to be reasonably accommodated. If I don't know that you've got a challenge, I can't then say, my darling, Ways, you look like you need reasonable accommodation. You will sue me because I'm making the wrong assumption. Therefore, you need to be open enough to say, HR, this is my challenge. I have a problem, ESO. Therefore, I need to see what are the options for reasonable accommodation. Some people get referred to me because they've approached their HR and HR have said, we don't know what to do for you or how to assist you, but maybe an OT will be able to assist us in terms of looking at a job and how can we repackage it such that you're still able to do it with the mental health disorder that you have. In closing, I asked how many employed people and there was no show of hands. I'm going to ask, I'm assuming that most people then work for somebody or you've got a company that you work for. By a show of hands, how many of you know what your company policy is on sick leave benefits? You know. Limuruti wa yiti on policy on sick leave benefits. And it's good to familiarize yourself with that policy. Because when you need it, that's when you need to know what's inside it. When the doctor has booked you off to be admitted in hospital for 21 days, and then they book you off for a further 8 weeks, you need to know where you stand. Yeah. Are you going to now use all of your sick leave days and then have to use your annual leave days? Or are you now going to take unpaid leave? How are you going to get covered? Familiarize yourself with your HR policies. Know what's inside those HR policies. They mustn't live in your folder, your HR, your leave. Know what's inside there so that when you do need to access those benefits, you know what's covered, what's made, what provision is there, and what provision is not made for. ELCSA. Who has ELCSA in their workplace? What is their number? Are we easy now? Do you have their card? Somewhere. Interesting answer. Yeah. You have ELCSA. You have their number. I'm not going to ask if you call them. If you don't have their number, you've obviously never used them. Anybody that has used ELCSA services, I'm not singling out ELCSA. You've used them. Have you used them? You've used them before. Okay. Employee assistance programs are there for a reason. As if somebody pays for those services, they count you by, and then they pay every month so that you can access ELCSA before for consultation. Provision is made for you to be able to talk to a professional over the phone. You can even have face-to-face consultations. Please make use of those numbers. Let them not sit and wait until, or not even be used at all. And your employer is just paying for, Muritu comment. No, please. No numbers for ELCSA, so that they're there for a reason. I had a lady that I assessed a month ago who called an ELCSA consultant, and she was suicidal. She was at work, and when I interviewed her in my office later on, she says, I had sat for a good month and I'd been looking at my policies and my beneficiaries. She had planned out everything about her life. And she was at the point where she was going to do that night. She picked up the phone and she called an ELCSA consultant. That person was on the phone with her until she was finally admitted to Vista Clinic. They said, I am not letting you go on the phone. If your battery dies, I need an alternative number because I am going to keep you on this phone until I know that you are in the hands of somebody that can take care of you. So please, that number is there for a reason, not just to keep in your wallet as an extra. I think that summarizes what I wanted to talk about in terms of mental health in the workplace. It's a broad issue, but I hope I've been able to give you more or less an indication of what occupational therapists do in relation to mental health issues in the workplace. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
There was a time when you were describing a scenario of an employee that moves from being an effective employee to everything just going wrong, every document is not correct and all that. I have that experience. However, it's a different situation. It's a woman, and it's because of pregnancy. Does the reasonable accommodation accommodate that? Because my observation is that many women have got challenges that become close to the mental illness issue because of hormones, and they don't know how to handle it in terms of their workplace with performance.
Okay. That is a very good question. Because then it takes us to, remember I said Employment Equity Act. Employment equity defines somebody that has got a disability in a different way. There's a criteria and they've got to meet these 3 criteria. They must have an impairment, either mental or physical. It must be long-term and recurring, and it must be limiting their progression in the workplace. And that's how we define a disability. Unfortunately, pregnancy doesn't anymore. Why? So already that block is. But you're asking a very valid point, because if that is not addressed in whichever way by a caring manager and supervisor, it can manifest into other issues, including depression at some point, because she's not able to deal with her work tasks, and then her productivity gets affected. So one needs to say, from an HR point of view, what can be done to assist her, and are there ways that you can be understanding in terms of a situation? I mean, we've all dealt with people in the workplace, and we are understanding in different ways, and we can be able to give limitations to say, can she work until 3 o'clock, go and rest, but whatever it is that she has not been able to do, can you able to do it on a Saturday morning and make sure that, the productivity gets covered? Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's other ways that you can always look at reasonable accommodation in the workplace. It is not cast into stone, it is not fixed, but it is our responsibility as managers and as employers to make sure that we create a environment where people can perform. So you're going to have to look at each situation differently and say, how can I assist them, the pregnancy until they can go off. 1, 2, 3.
I just want to actually comment on what you mentioned earlier about getting proper diagnosis whenever you're ill. What do you do whereby you consult a doctor, a GP, you get incorrect diagnosis, you go to 2-3 different specialists, each and every one will give you, their own diagnosis that are not even related to each other.
That's a difficult one. It's very complex, you see, because somehow we have all started becoming specialists in everything. That's the first point of college. That personally I find is an issue. I get clinical psychologist, and in saying why, you see, I've sent people to her because I know my area of competence. And when it's outside that, I then refer on. Some people don't do that, my darling, unfortunately. And when they don't do that, you fall victim to that. And unless you've got somebody that you can consult who will direct you to the right place to say, please go and see a psychiatrist, please go and see a clinical psychologist, please go and see a life coach to be able to address this particular issue, then you're kind of stuck. It just almost depends on who are your resources and support systems that will be able to guide you and navigate you. People are just mean. My mother was, even now, she went to hospital beginning of this year in January. I'm making a typical example of what you're asking. She has a left side paralysis. That comes and goes. She turns 70 next year. They did a lumbar puncture and an MRI and a blood test and everything at a top-notch hospital. No one could tell her what's going on. Why do people not refer on when they know that they cannot make a proper diagnosis? I don't know. So that is a complex one, to be able to answer this. It becomes challenging in that way. Aswin, or do you want to talk to that diagnosis?
Yes, I want to talk to that.
To the follow-up. Oh, because there's a question coming back.
Thanks, Kathy. To add on to what she has said right now, you always say that when you are getting treatment, there is nothing wrong with getting secondary opinion. So
we check it like
I will always hit for every problem. Yeah, if you don't know what's wrong, remote.
Okay, my question is, in terms of mental health, at what point do I know or decide I need to see a mental health practitioner? Is it like, you must go to the dentist twice a year? Is it something like that whereby I'm like, okay, once a year I just need to have a one-on-one session? Because we go to GPs every time. Sometimes we go there like, hey, I feel tired. They give you vitamins and start taking vitamins and 1, 2, 3, you're addicted.
Ntabi wanted to talk to that. Pula, give it to him. It's like a little.
I tell people now, as you said, we all have GPs, we all have dentists, we all have different professionals, but we don't have psychologists or life coaches or psychologists on our numbers. And it's necessary, it's crucial for you to have someone that you can talk to. Only to try. So I can't say you must go once a year or you must go twice a year. It depends on how you feel at that point when you get to bounce on something or somebody. However, we are also lucky if something is not kosher with you and they recommend that you do it. Because sometimes when you are feeling that low, you are going down, you are having depression, you are having suicidal thoughts. Nothing in you tells you for let you go to a psychologist. All you want to do is what you want to do. So it's important also, as I said earlier, to surround yourself with people that will care for you, that will see that you need to speak to someone. However, keep it best.
Also, when it starts affecting your day-to-day life, that's something that we need to be aware of. When you start wanting to miss work more often than you would, sick leave, feel like annual leave. Today it starts impacting on your day-to-day life. So like I was saying, you start not feeling like you can take care of yourself. At work, your performance deteriorates. In terms of your interaction with family members, that also gets affected. Then you know it's time for a serious almost service, besides the regular ones that you'd be doing. So day-to-day life will be able to tell you that there is something that's not quite in tune. Therefore, I need to do something about it. Was that the last one? I have the mic. I don't know where's the MC, but I see the other ladies in the white t-shirts again. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have been presented to you. You've been a lovely audience. And thank you for the young adults. Yes. For inviting us. Thank you. I think she had a question.